Hey, thanks for joining me. This one, we got a new book that I didn't even know existed. Um, I'm sorry to say that I can't remember which one of my friends sent me this. I've got a couple of people who occasionally send me books. I think it was my buddy Latik Curry because he sends me a lot of stuff. But if I got that wrong and it was somebody else, I've got a couple of books from several people, and I set them aside and I get to things eventually, and then sometimes I'm just like, I forget who sent me what. I'm sorry, guys. Um, so which one of you sent this to me, thank you. Never heard of it, had no idea what it was about, and I was like, all right. I mean, let's look at something different. Let's look at something new. And this is new as of this year, as of this recording. Um, we're right in the middle of July of 2026, and this book has a print date of April of 2026. So something different, something new. Image Comics. Names across the top of the creative team. Nobody I know. Nobody that's a name that I have any recognition on. But that doesn't matter. It's always something to be like, is this going to be kind of a special new thing that I've never seen before and it's going to blow me away? Or is it going to be some kind of like, doesn't it, no interest for me? I don't know. The title alone kind of is interesting. Corpse Knight. So you get kind of like a medieval type knight, but corpse knight. I mean, it kind of makes you think, well, is it a dead zombie thing? It makes you wonder. Cover is, it's a good drawing, and the color's neat and the design's neat. I don't have any problem with it, but I also can't help but wonder if there's like a potential better cover to kind of get the point across about what this is or what it could be. I don't know. I don't know. I like it. It's a fantastic drawing. The artist in this thing is incredible. I don't know. I'm kind of like in this weird kind of limbo on like, I don't love it and I don't hate it. I'm kind of right in the middle of it, even though it's obviously great art. I do like the very different kind of coloring approach. It looks like, I mean, for all I know, it's still digital, but it looks kind of like a hand painted watercolor type thing. I don't know. But let's just start out flipping open the cover. Corpse Knight. So, Michael, I'm guessing you say Chavez, creator, writer, Matthew Roberts, creator, artist, and then a colorist, Rico Renzi, letterer, Pat Brosseau. I don't know any of those names. But again, who cares? It's one thing if you kind of know the creative team, but if you don't, then we just move on. And so it starts out very simply, and if you watch my channel, you know me. I talk very often how I love it when the writer just lets the visuals tell the story. Don't have to have text boxes everywhere. Like, we can get the idea. Like, let our imagination do some of the footwork, please. Is that asking for too much? I really don't think so. You get this kind of like heavily like golden sunlight lit image of a man and a woman, and she's clearly pregnant. And then there's a close-up of her face, and she's smiling. And the text says, "What was Mama like?" And then the next text box says, "She was beautiful." And then the next panel is a cross, very elaborately designed, very cool. And they're clearly at the gravesite. So you can infer from the simplicity in just a couple, 3, 4, 5 images and a few words, you understand that there is a man and a woman. They had a baby, but the mama's dead for some reason. So there's father and the daughter that she was pregnant with. So the daughter asks, "What was mama like?" Dad says she was beautiful. So the daughter asks, "How did you meet her?" And he just looks at her and says, "That's a story for another time." What a great opening page. It's just so simple. Few words, few images, conveys all kind of interesting ideas and emotions and drama instantly. And so I'm like, okay, Michael Chavez, I think you know what you're doing. Let's see how it goes. Beautiful double page spread. An artist, again, Matthew Roberts, obviously kind of basing his art with an understanding of realistic landscapes. Everything's kind of drawn in a very simple style. It's kind of a minimalistic style, but it conveys the idea perfectly. You know exactly what we're looking at. You know, you get the idea, you understand what we're seeing. It looks this big, vast, beautiful countryside. The text continues from the father talking to the daughter, where she asked, where did you meet her? And he says, that's a story for another time. But it continues where he says, but I promise one day I'll tell you. Then we cut to 1429 France. It was like, oh, for a comic book, especially from Image Comics, an American type comic, we're setting it way in the past in France. Like, how many times do you see that? You know, comics are, you know, we typically think of it like superhero stuff. They're modern day guys running around in tights, fighting in New York City, fighting monsters and lizards and shit. Whatever we're about to read, 1429 France. I'm like, I mean, I appreciate history as much as anybody else, but I'm like, do I want to read a comic book set in ancient times in France? I don't know. They got me already with one page and then a great double page spread. So anyway, let's keep going. The text box gives a little bit of background. It says, the 100 Years' War rages. Murder, sickness, and starvation are common. It is the very worst of times. And then there are, I'm going to presume, the father and the daughter plowing fields, got the horse. It's beautiful. Love the shot. And again, you'll notice, like I was saying, there's not text boxes telling us shit everywhere. The writer just lets the visuals tell the story, and the artist gets to compose the pages and let us just follow the story and only see the images and hear the words out of their mouths. And it's perfect. The father and daughter are riding in a little horse-drawn carriage. The father reaches over and plucks a simple little flower. This is very specific. And he gives it to his daughter and says, for you, Foy. So her name is Foy, F-O-Y. So that's cute. Dad gives his daughter a flower. Now they're in town. And again, the visuals are very simple. I appreciate that the writer understood the idea of minimalistic information being given, but just enough so you know everything you need to know in a couple of panels. They're in town. The daughter is sitting there and she asks to somebody, she says, where's Camille? And you got this guy standing right here in the next panel. You see him, and a voice says, Camille has gone missing. So this girl, you're presuming this girl has a friend, this young girl, and the girl's gone. She's just missing. It's like something's going on. Cut to the next panel. We're in an entirely different scene. They've moved on to a different place. The father is with the daughter, and she's got a bow and arrow in her hands. And the father is saying, these are dark times. You should learn to protect yourself. It's like, okay, great. Minimalistic storytelling, telling you everything you need to know. A kid has gone missing. The father is worried for his own child. So he's teaching her to defend herself. So she fires an arrow, great shot, and here's a tree, and the arrow misses. And there's multiple arrows in the ground showing that she's trying, but she's missing. So she throws the bow on the ground. She says, merde, why can't I just use a sword? The father says, the sword is too heavy. A bow is quick, nimble. The daughter says, it's impossible. So she's getting pissed off. She wants to have a stabby weapon, but the father's like, for your size, your strength, and what you need, the bow is what you need to learn. So the daughter says it's impossible. So the father gets down in front of her and starts telling her a story. Impossible? He says, there's a girl from, if there's some words in here, if I pronounce them wrong, you have to just, forgive me. There is a girl from Doremi, just a few years older than you. So the father starts telling a story. And then, of course, in comics, the drastic color change means we're in a different scene. We're seeing something from a different time, a different place, a different character, a different perspective. So the father's story is like, there was a girl just a few years older than you. She was a peasant. She came from nothing. This young girl led the French army and lifted the siege at Orleans just this month. So there's this girl on top of a horse. There she is walking into a church. The text says, and she was riding through Lagny, and she found a church. A group of women was praying over the body of a child, an infant boy. He'd been dead for 3 days. There's a baby. They say that he'd been dead for 3 days. And so this woman, she prayed over the child, and then he came back to life. And we cut back to the daughter listening to her father. The father says, with enough faith, nothing is impossible. We just have to trust in God. And the daughter says, well, what's her name? And the father says her name. I mean, I don't know how you pronounce it. It's supposed to be Joan of Arc, but Joan and then the last name D''ARC. I don't know how that's pronounced appropriately, so I'm not going to fuck it up. I'm just going to say Joan of Arc. And of course, the daughter knows that name. I mean, that's what I get out of it. She's enthralled. Beautiful shot as the girl just understands. And so the father says to the girl, try again, and the daughter has the weapon. So it's like he's inspired her with this story of like, with the power of faith and believing and trying, anything can be possible. So the daughter's back at it. But then suddenly the father tells the daughter, stop. And she's like, what? He's like, shh. So then they're over by their horse-drawn carriage, their wagon. He's getting out a sword. I gotta say, that artist, like, everything is drawn beautifully in this thing, but that sword looks great. It looks so real. The scabbard that it's in, the little metal tip at the end, the shape of it, how it's flat, the little wrapping around it. Such a great looking sword. So good. Some artists couldn't care less about putting detail on a sword. They just put a handle in someone's hand and then like a straight weapon and like, hey, I drew a sword. But the father, like, he notices something. He's got this father's obviously kind of a badass, and you'll see how and why. It's really interesting. He noticed something. He's like, shush. They go over, he gets a sword. She says, when I say go, you get on Pierre. She's like, what's happening? He says, cross the river, ride fast, and don't look back. So something's got him spooked as a motherfucker. Suddenly, an arrow is flying through the air, and I love this shot as a father protecting his child. He just puts his hand out right in front of her face to stop the arrow. The arrow goes through his hand. He stops it just like that, sacrificing his own well-being to save his child, which as a father, yes, of course. He grabs the girl, tucks her into close to him and says down, and then suddenly multiple arrows fly into the father's back, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 or 10 arrows into his back, protecting her. He gets her on the horse, pulls his sword, and yells at her to go, while all this time with the arrows in his back, telling his little girl to go. Fantastic stuff. Incredible, awesome shot of the girl riding away on the horse. The horse is perfectly drawn. I love the coloring and the rendering to show speed lines in the background to show that she's running away. There's the father, sword drawn, arrows in his back. And here's some armored, mysterious figure. Great rendering on this shot up front. Cut back to the daughter. She's got tears in her eyes. Cut back to the father. Screamy face, arms in the air, blood everywhere flying. And then the last panel is just a patch of darkness and blood. Like, Jesus Christ. This conveys so much story, so much drama, so much emotion with so little. It tells you everything you need. All the fat is cut away to leave only the most important and pertinent moments. I'm like, this is crazy. This is so good. Later, there's the daughter. Great composition with the silhouette, the horse, the girl, the moon behind them, framed in between the trees, right in the center. She's sitting there by herself. You see that some time has passed. She's just standing there by herself. Again, no more text boxes telling you anything. If this was a Spawn comic, you'd be reading 1,000 words a page that tell you nothing. But eventually, the girl just goes back to the scene where her father was. Time has passed. No explanation necessary. His dead body is on the ground. He's bleeding out. And she's just cradling his body. And she just says, Papa. Like, God, this is so emotional. This is crazy. Soon, maybe the next day, there's the grave of her mother, and she has buried her own father and handmade a little wooden cross. Now, that's heartbreaking. Now, I say this as like a father, and I got kids, and they're young. They're 11 and 14. And, when you get kids, your world changes for the better if you're a good parent and you take care of them. So now it just cuts to scenes of the girl just having to go about life on her own. There she is working the fields with the big, the scythe to cut the wheat down. There she is shoveling hay. There she is with the horse and the carriage, just taking care of business on her own. Back into the town on another day. She's obviously selling the stuff that she's harvested from her farm to the guy that she's selling it to. He says, your father couldn't make it again? And she says, maybe next time. So it's obviously like, these people know who this girl is, but no one knows that her father's dead, and she's not telling anyone. They're just like, oh, he couldn't make it, so she's just running these errands on her own. She's making money. As she's walking along, she's got some coin in her hand, and one coin drops out of her hand, tinks and rolls across the ground. A mysterious dark hand picks up the coin. As the girl sees, this shadowy figure comes out of the dark holding the coin. He says, "Ah, a lucky coin for a lucky girl." The next panel, the girl's on the little horse-drawn carriage being pulled away, and then there's this mysterious figure that was right here that gave her the coin back. He's like, very lucky. If you were paying attention to the panels earlier, that mysterious figure that showed up with the armor and this helmet with some points on it, there he is there. So this is the guy that killed her father. Why is he stalking the daughter? Don't know. But they're going to go after the daughter is the idea. So cut to a little bit while later. It's darker. It's raining. We're passing the grave in the front panel right up front. There's the grave of the father with the wreath around it. The mysterious villain and some henchmen are there. The main guy is saying, the food and weapons we split, but the little girl is mine. As they keep approaching, they hear a rustling in the bushes, and you see a little figure, and presumably the little girl right here. She understood that she was being followed, and she was hiding in the bushes, but she tries to get away, and they hear her. They're like, what was that? And they're like, take Corbin and find out. So two guys go chasing after whoever it is up to the hill where the grave is that they passed. As she's run back up to it, the little girl is at her father's grave. And one of the minion soldiers is like, it's just a little girl. He comes up, weapons in hands. He says, hello, sweetheart. There's a silhouette of the girl up front with her hand on the cross. The bad guy's like, there's no reason to be scared. We're humble travelers. What are you doing out here in the rain? A little creepy. And there's a shot of the girl next to her father's grave, eyes shut, hands together, obviously praying. And then suddenly, out of the ground, zombified hand reaches up out of the ground. Now, just following the story, this is the dead body being raised from the grave of her father. She prayed, and he's coming back to life. And he gave that story of Joan of Arc raising the dead child back to life through faith and belief. She's doing the same thing. And is that what's happening? Holy shit. Great shot of a hand coming up. The bad guy's like, mother of, cuts to another scene. There's the main villain and his other henchman. The henchman's like, you hear that? And then they look into the wheat fields or whatever, and it says, Corbin, is that you? And then the one henchman, he just kind of does a grunt, gurt, something's done, something bad has happened to him. And you see he falls to the ground, and the cross that was the grave site of the father is stuck in his back. Not him, though. That is one of the other guys, because there's the guy there. Yeah, I misread that. Yeah, this guy, he's got a peg leg and a mace, the chain with the spiky ball at the end of it. Anyway. Bad guy's got the cross stuck in his back. And then the main guy and the other henchmen see, they're like, Christ. They're like, who's there? And in the wheat is the shadowy figure. Now, this is the one part I was a little confused at in terms of what's going on. Like, you get the idea. Girl has raised zombie father from the dead. He's killing guys. And so there's the shadowy figure. But then I'm like, okay, so here's another bad guy, dagger in his face. I'm seeing it now. This is the leg of zombie father, and these are the feet of one of the bad guys being lifted off the ground, and their guts are literally spilling out. Okay, I could not make heads or tail of that. I have to say this artist is doing an incredible job, but from a storytelling perspective, I couldn't figure that out until just this moment. While I'm like, is there a guy jumping? There's his feet and there's his guts, but I get that zombie father was coming to life, but I couldn't follow it. But now I do. I got it. Me read comics good. Killing the guy, the daughter's watching, and then the main armored henchman, bad guy, watching from the shadows, grabs the daughter, puts his hand over her mouth, drags her away back to this cottage, throws her inside of it, tells her to be quiet. She's angry, she's pissed, she's sitting on the ground. As they go inside the cottage, they shut the door. The bad guy and his one remaining henchman. The main bad guy says, where the hell did that thing come from? The henchman says, it was the girl. She summoned him. And now we get this great exterior shot as corpse bad guy or corpse father carrying the mace weapon and an axe weapon coming towards the little cottage house. I do have to say, from a compositional kind of standpoint, this shot, it kind of looks like this guy is a fucking giant. Like, he's like taller than these buildings. I just understand that he's close in the foreground, but I feel like this low angle worm's eye view shot should maybe have more of a worm's eye view perspective looking up at him, but it looks like we're looking at him kind of straight on, and it feels off. I saw this, I'm like, is he a fucking giant? Is he size of like 50 feet tall or something like that? Which it's not, but it's just kind of the angle that we're seeing it at. I feel like it could be a little bit different, but I say that kind of criticizing this very spectacular artist. It's a minor thing. We get the point. Dead zombie body's on its way. The minion is saying to the little girl, he's like, tell me what that thing is or I'll chop your little legs off. The girl says, that's Papa's sword. So clearly they took this sword from the father when they killed him. The daughter says, you killed him and you took his sword. So the guy says, shut her up. So they backhand the girl. And at that exact moment, the doors kick open. You know, there's wind, there's rain. They kick open. The bad guys turn and look. The wind and the rain come inside. And then there's just blood flying everywhere. The henchman up here is saying, please, no, God, no. As zombified guy with a giant mace weapon brings the weapon up. And then we just cut to an exterior shot of the cottage and the wind and the rain. Interesting kind of border pattern with the color as there's a screaming. Obviously, bad guy's dead. Soon, the little girl, she looks up and the zombified guy just kind of grunts at her. He holds out his hand, and in his hand is another one of the same flower that the father picked for her earlier in the book to identify to her so she understands that this is who he is, and she could feel comforted because there's the flower. It's the same kind of gesture that he's done. So she takes his hand and says, Papa, you came back to me. So we get a couple of panels of the helmet of the armored villain that did the killing earlier. Presumably they're dead, but now this guy's taking the armor because it's that same helmet design, which is a really cool design. I was kind of surprised that helmet design is what the bad guy was wearing, but he's keeping it for himself. I mean, it's an interesting idea. He's taking the helmet. The daughter is putting it on her zombie father's head. The text says, I don't know why God has done this to you, but I know someone who can help. You told me that anything is possible with enough faith, and she has more faith than anyone. We must find her before it is too late. So there's this great close-up shot of the guy's face with his eyes looking through the armor. We said we have to find her before it's too late. And there's a great shot of the daughter and the father, and it says, we must find Joan of Arc. The end. So Corpse Knight is this girl's father. I was like, holy shit, you got my attention. Like when I got this book in the mail from my friend that sent it to me, I kind of looked at it. I'd never heard of it. I kind of set it aside. And then, some days or weeks later, because I've had this in hand for actually a while now. And I kind of flipped through it and I was like, oh, okay, it looks kind of fun. One of these days I have to actually sit down and read it. But then I did. I was like, God, I never thought a story set in 1429 France would have any kind of plot that I'd be interested in. But they got me. I'm like, oh shit, this is kind of neat. What an interesting idea. So I'm like, okay, I've talked about this before. I so much prefer it when there's a comic, especially a first issue, where there's a page of text from at least someone of the creative team to tell us a little bit about what the hell this is, where it comes from, why it's there, and why it's important to them, therefore making it kind of important to me. I am all about this, and some people just don't do it. And I get it. Some people want to just be like, I just want my work to stand on its own. Sure. But I mean, I'm an independent, enthusiastic amateur comic creator myself. And I want to hear some personal thoughts from the people who make these things. It feels like I have a little bit more of a connection to you, the creatives. And it makes me enjoy your work even more. So I highly recommend, if you make a book, put some shit in there. Just tell us a little bit about what the hell this is and why it's important. So this text, I'm not going to read it all to you, but there's some interesting parts. Again, this is from the writer, Michael Chavez. Welcome, dear reader, to the first issue of Corpse Night. I started writing this while I was directing The Nun 2 in France. Okay, and so I'm like, oh shit, this guy's a movie director. Now, The Nun 2, I don't know if he directed The Nun 1, but he's a movie director. And I understand it's probably like a cheap kind of like B-movie, horror movie kind of situation. But this is a guy who's a filmmaker. I'm like, he's a creative. I mean, anyone who's making a comic book is a creative, but he exists in movie world. But he wrote this story, started writing the story while he was directing The Nun 2 in France. That movie has a storyline about saints and relics, and while I was reading about a lot of different saints at the time, I started reading more about Joan of Arc and her relationship with, there's a name, it's French, I would mispronounce it, so I'm not even going to try. A relationship with so-and-so, and without spoiling anything, I was hooked. I really wanted to incorporate that piece of history into some kind of script or story. At the time, I was shooting The Nun 2 during the week and then writing on the weekend, but I couldn't crack the Joan of Arc story. Ultimately, I couldn't find a strong emotional way in. That was until I found Foy and her father, and the two of them took me on their journey in a way I couldn't have expected. I have two amazing kids, Scarlett and Jack, and they are the big inspiration for this comic. Once I became a parent, I became, probably to an unhealthy degree, obsessed with death and mortality. I became a bit haunted by the question of what happens to my kids when I'm gone. Probably a good time to warn that this book isn't a horror comedy or anything like that. So that right there is an example of why I like to get a message, a page of some kind of text where the creative person is telling me how and why they created this. One, he's a movie maker. He was trying to write a story, he had some ideas, but he couldn't crack it. But then he come upon the idea of this daughter and her zombie father, and he cracked the story. And then he talks about he's got kids and how it affected his life and how he became obsessed with the idea of like, who's going to take care of my kids when I'm gone, and just the whole thing of being a parent. I am connected to this guy a little bit, and I like it. So thank you for adding that little bit in there. It says, Corpse Night is the first comic I've ever made, and I'm proud to say I simply had no idea to say what the hell I'm doing. When I started, I naively thought, comics are like storyboards, right? And then, of course, I've directed 3 movies by now. How hard can this be? Well, I learned the answers were no and very hard. The real reason this series exists and is as good as it is because of the contributions of 3 amazing gentlemen. First, the incredibly talented Matthew Roberts. I've loved his work on Manifest Destiny and Universal Monsters, Creatures from the Black Lagoon Lives. He's been such a great ally in getting Corpse Night made in all its epic, gruesome glory. Second, Rico Renzi, a master of color who captures this incredible, almost nostalgic feeling of what it was like to read a comic as a kid, especially the bloody parts. He talks about his editor and that type of stuff and everyone giving him a hand. He says, it's been a long journey. I'm proud of where it's headed. Thanks for picking up this issue. I hope you enjoy it, reading it as much as we did making it. So, great. You got me. I am interested. I need to go find more issues of this. It's that simple. Make brilliant work. And again, it's simple. It's been a long time since I've seen a book that conveyed so much information with so few panels and so few words, but did it exactly perfectly. I understand everything that I'm seeing. I get the feeling and the vibe, and I'm interested. So what can I say? Corpse Night. A great book. I'm shocked, like blown away. I hope that the story continues to be as interesting. But I'm, you got me enough that I'm like, I will continue to see what I can find out about this book. Very interesting, very surprised. And it's one of those kind of rare instances where a new comic grabbed my attention and I was like, brilliant piece of work. I'm inspired. I want to write. I want to draw. I want to do my own stuff now. I want to continue doing my own stuff because I've been doing my own stuff for a long time. But this is the fuel for that motor, so to speak. When I want to write and draw and make my own books, sometimes you got to kind of stop and refuel the engine of creativity and inspiration and that little heart and soul and light inside you that makes you want to create. And this was like premium gas. ready to go make books. So I would love to know what you think. Have you guys read this? Have you seen it? Great stuff. So that is all I've got for now. As always, thank you for joining me, and I will see you on the next one.